AITA for kicking my brother and his girlfriend out after they completely rearranged my house while I was on vacation. I, 32F, bought my house 3 years ago after saving for a long time. It's not huge, but it's mine. A 2-bedroom cottage-style place with a big garden I've been slowly cultivating. I work remotely as a technical writer, so my home is also my workspace. I take a lot of pride in how it looks and functions. My younger brother, Kyle, 27M, has had a pretty rough go of things over the past couple years. He got laid off during the pandemic. Then his apartment burned down in a small electrical fire. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but he lost almost everything. Since then, he's bounced between temp jobs and crashing at friends' places. About 6 months ago, I offered to let him stay in my guest room while he got back on his feet. He was incredibly grateful and promised it would only be for a few months. I agreed with a few ground rules. Contribute to groceries, clean up after yourself, no big parties, and don't touch anything in my office. At first, things were okay. Kyle did his part, and it was actually kind of nice having someone around. But after a couple months, things started to shift. He started getting more comfortable, stopped doing his dishes consistently, left laundry everywhere, and brought his new girlfriend, Tara, 26F, around constantly. She was polite at first, but over time, I felt like I was being pushed out of my own space. She'd take over the kitchen for hours making elaborate meals, leave makeup in the bathroom, and even use my personal bathrobe once without asking. Still, I let it go because Kyle was my brother and I wanted help. Things came to a head 2 weeks ago when I went on a week-long vacation with some friends to a cabin in the mountains, our first proper break in ages. I told Kyle I'd be gone and trusted him to be responsible. When I got home, I was completely blindsided. My house was unrecognizable. The furniture in the living room had been completely rearranged. My big, cozy sectional was shoved into the corner to open up the space, as Kyle later explained. My bookshelf had been moved to the other wall and alphabetized by Tara. They'd replaced the rugs with some they found on sale and changed out my throw pillows for more modern ones. My office, which I had explicitly said was off limits, had been cleaned out. They'd taken down the cork board with my notes and pinned a canvas print of a city skyline in its place. My dual monitors were disconnected, some of my paperwork had been stuffed into drawers, and a ring light had been set up next to my desk. I stood there just stunned. Kyle and Tara were sitting at the kitchen island like it was just another day. When I asked what the hell happened, Kyle said they'd wanted to surprise me by doing a mini makeover of the house while I was away. He said Tara had a knack for interior design and thought she could bring some life to my space. He acted like they'd done me a favor. I told him immediately to undo everything, put my furniture back, remove the new rugs, take down the artwork in my office. Tara looked offended and said I was being ungrateful. She said my decor was outdated and that the changes made the house more inviting. I told her I didn't ask for inviting. I asked for nothing to be touched. Kyle got defensive and said I was overreacting, that they'd work hard on it, spent their own money, and I should at least give it a chance. I told him I didn't care what they spent, that this was my home, not theirs, and he'd crossed a major boundary. The final straw came when I tried to start putting things back and realized that some of my original items were missing. My antique reading lamp, a gift from my late grandmother, was nowhere to be found. When I asked, Tara admitted she'd taken it to a consignment store because it clashed with the new vibe. I lost it. I told them both to pack their things and get out immediately. Kyle begged me to reconsider, saying they had nowhere else to go. I told him that was no longer my problem. I'd given him a place to stay with simple rules, and he disrespected every one of them. They left that night, and I've since learned they're crashing on a friend's couch. Now, my parents are calling me heartless. They say I should have been clearer about boundaries, as if don't touch my office wasn't clear enough, and that Kyle meant well, that he didn't destroy anything, and that I should have just been grateful for the effort. My dad even said, "You've always been a bit controlling with your space. Maybe this is a lesson in flexibility." My friends are on my side and think it was a massive overstep. But now that some time has passed, I'm wondering if I did overreact. Maybe I should have sat down and talked it through before kicking them out. Maybe I could have just asked them to leave my office alone and let the other stuff slide until they found a new place. I don't know anymore. I've always been particular about my home, And maybe that's not fair to expect when you have someone staying with you. So, AITA for kicking my brother and his girlfriend out after they redecorated my house without asking. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for kicking my brother and his family out of my house after they disrespected my late wife. I, 37M, lost my wife, Sarah, 4 years ago to a car accident. We were married for 10 years, together since we were 20, and she was my best friend. Losing her was like losing a part of myself. She was kind, smart, witty, and the glue that held a lot of our lives together. After she passed, I didn't do much. I went to work, I came home, I grieved. The house felt like a museum for a while. Her books on the shelves, her knitting in the basket by the couch, her favorite mug still on the windowsill. Eventually, I started therapy, and over time, I began to accept the loss and try to move forward. But I made a decision early on. I wasn't going to erase her from my life just because she was gone. I still have photos of her around the house. I have a bookshelf dedicated to her favorite novels and her old journals. I keep a blanket she made on the couch. I even visit her grave every Sunday and talk to her like I used to when she was alive. I know it might sound odd, but it helps me. Fast forward to last year, my younger brother Jason, 34M, hit a rough patch. He lost his job and had to move out of his apartment. He asked if he, his wife, Anna, 32F, and their 2 kids, 5M and 3F, could stay with me for a while. I said yes. It was supposed to be temporary, 3 months tops, but they've been here almost 9 months now. At first, it was fine. The kids were a little loud, and the house felt more chaotic, but I was okay with it. I was glad to help. But over time, things started to wear on me. Anna started making subtle comments about my shrine to Sarah. She'd say things like, "Don't you think it's time to take down some of these pictures? Or it must be so confusing for the kids to see a woman everywhere who isn't me." I ignored it at first, thinking she was just uncomfortable because it wasn't her space. Then she started rearranging things. I come home from work and notice Sarah's books had been moved, or one of her framed photos had been turned face down. Once I saw the blanket folded and stuffed into a closet. I confronted Anna, and she said she was just trying to make the house feel more like a home for everyone. I told her this was my home, and she needed to stop touching Sarah's things. Jason apologized for her, but it kept happening. Then last week, I came home to find that the bookshelf had been completely rearranged. Sarah's journals were gone. I panicked. When I asked Anna about it, she said she did me a favor and boxed them up to give me closure. I lost it. I told her she had no right to touch those. She said she was trying to help me move on because this isn't healthy. I asked her where the box was, and she said she didn't know. Maybe the garage. I searched the whole garage. Nothing. After an hour of frantically tearing through storage bins, I found the box shoved behind old Christmas decorations. The journals were inside, but water had leaked into the bottom of the box, and one of them was ruined. I sat on the garage floor and cried. I hadn't cried like that since Sarah's funeral. Jason came in, saw me, and said I was overreacting. That was time to let go and start living again. That Anna was just trying to help me heal, and I should be grateful. I told him and Anna to get out. That night, I said I didn't care where they went, but they were not welcome in my house anymore. They left, but not quietly. Anna screamed at me, saying I was heartless for kicking out a family with kids. Jason called me an unstable hermit who would die alone surrounded by dead memories. I didn't say anything. I just stood there until their car pulled away. Now my parents are involved. They think I took it too far. My mom said Anna was wrong to move the journals, but she meant well. I should have handled it with more grace. My dad said I need to forgive and bring them back. That family comes before everything. I asked him if he would have been okay with someone tossing out mom's memory if she died. He got quiet. Some of my friends say I did the right thing, that I was generous to house them that long, and they overstepped big time. Others think I need to let go of the past, and maybe this is the push I needed to start over. I don't even know what letting go is supposed to mean. Does it mean forgetting her? Pretending she didn't exist? I'm not sitting in a dark room, crying every night. I have a job, hobbies, I go out with friends. I live my life, but I still love Sarah. I always will. And the things she left behind, her words, her photos, the things she touched, they matter to me. They're all I have left of her. It's been a week since they left. The house is quiet again, peaceful in a way, but I keep going over it in my head, wondering if I really did overreact, wondering if I could have handled it differently. I'm not heartless. I just felt violated, like someone came in and erased the most important part of my life without permission. So Reddit, AITA? AITA for kicking my brother and his pregnant wife out of my house after what she said to my daughter? My brother, Tom, 32M, and his wife, Lana, 31F, moved in with me, 36M, and my daughter Lily, 13F, about 5 months ago. They had been living in a rental that was getting sold, and with the housing market the way it is, they asked if they could stay for a while to save money. I live in a 4-bedroom house that I bought after my divorce, so space wasn't really the issue. I agreed, but with the understanding that it was temporary, 6 months max, and that they'd contribute to bills and groceries. That was all discussed, agreed to, and they moved in. At first, everything was fine. I work full-time and have Lily half the time, shared custody with my ex. Tom and I have always been close, and I figure it would be fine. Lana and I were never especially close, but we've been cordial. She's 5 months pregnant now, and I get that pregnancy is hard. I've tried to be accommodating. I moved my home office into a smaller room so they could have the bigger guest room. I let them have more fridge space, and when Lana complained about certain smells, she's been very sensitive. I adjusted my cooking. I try to be understanding, but things started to get tense about 2 months ago. Lana started making comments about Lily. Nothing overtly cruel at first, but little things like, she's kind of quiet, isn't she? Or, is it normal for her to be on her phone that much? I brush it off. Then it escalated to comments about Lily's weight, which is completely normal, by the way, and her clothes. I told her to stop, politely but firmly. Lily is shy and has been having a tough time socially since middle school started, and I don't want her feeling uncomfortable in her own home. Then, last weekend, it went too far. It was Saturday afternoon. I had gone out to pick up some groceries and let Lily stay home because she had a Zoom club meeting for school. When I got back, Lily was in her room, crying, door locked, and Tom was sitting on the couch looking incredibly uncomfortable. I asked what happened, and he said, "Lana just got a little harsh, I guess." I knocked on Lily's door and eventually got her to let me in. She was a mess, puffy eyes, trembling. She told me that Lana came into her room and started telling her that she needed to start acting like a young lady and take pride in her appearance if she doesn't want to end up alone. She apparently also said, "When our baby comes, I don't want them picking up any of your bad habits." Lily said she tried to leave the room, but Lana stood in front of the door and kept talking. That's when she locked herself in and called her mom, who thankfully talked her down until I got home. I was furious. I went downstairs and told Lana to pack her things. They had to leave. Tom jumped in, begging me to reconsider, saying she was just hormonal and stressed. I told him I didn't care. She spoke to my daughter like she was garbage, made her cry in her own room, and I wouldn't tolerate that from anyone, family or not. Lana started crying, saying I was kicking out a pregnant woman, and I told her she should have thought about that before bullying a 13-year-old. Tom said I was being heartless, that Lana had nowhere to go, and that I was overreacting. I told them they had 2 days to figure something out. I wasn't throwing them on the street that minute, but they were not staying in my house. I also made it clear they weren't allowed to be alone with Lily again. They left the next evening to stay with one of Lana's cousins. Since then, I've been getting texts from my mom and one of our sisters saying I should have handled it more privately and that Lana's going through a lot, and maybe she just snapped. My mom said I was being too harsh and that family doesn't turn their back on each other. I told them all that my daughter comes first, and if they didn't understand that, I didn't really care to argue. Tom hasn't said much since except to send me a passive-aggressive message about how this will be remembered when I need help one day. I haven't responded. I feel bad about the baby. I really do. I didn't want to make things harder for them than they already are. but I just couldn't let Lana stay after what she said and did. And honestly, part of me wonders if I should have seen this coming earlier. There were signs. Lily has been quieter than usual all week, and I've been trying to reassure her that none of this was her fault. She asked me if she made them leave, and I told her absolutely not. That if anyone is to blame, it's the adult who decided to be cruel to a child. I even offered to get her into therapy again, and she agreed. Still, now that a few days have passed, I'm starting to wonder, was I too harsh? Could I have handled this differently, like sat them down and laid down stricter rules instead of kicking them out? I know emotions were high, but I can't shake the guilt. I feel like I'm caught between protecting my daughter and not being the family member who turns their back. And now I've got a chunk of my family upset with me, and I'm second-guessing myself. AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she said I wasn't photogenic enough to be a bridesmaid? This has been eating me alive for a couple weeks now. I'm 27F, and my sister Emily, 30F, is getting married in June. She's always been very focused on appearances, both hers and everyone else's. Not in a vain way, but more like she's obsessed with how things will look to others. Her Instagram is curated like a magazine spread. She works in PR and constantly talks about optics and presentation and how everything sends a message. Anyway, when she got engaged last year, she told me she wanted me as a bridesmaid, and I was genuinely touched. We've had our ups and downs, but I thought we were in a better place. I was even there when she picked her dress and helped plan part of the bridal shower. I felt like we were reconnecting. Then about 3 weeks ago, she asked if we could talk privately. I figured it was about seating charts or something dumb, so I said sure. We went to a cafe, and she launched into this rehearsed-sounding monologue about how she's been working so hard to curate a specific aesthetic for her wedding. She even had a Pinterest board pulled up. I thought she was just being her usual type A self until she said this exact sentence. I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I don't think you're photogenic enough to be a bridesmaid. I just stared at her. I thought I misheard. But no, she went on to explain how the dresses she picked are a certain cut that she doesn't think flatters my body type, and that when she tried to edit a photo from her engagement party that included me, she struggled to make the group look cohesive. She wasn't even being cruel about it. She said it in this weirdly clinical, detached way, like she was critiquing a magazine layout. I didn't know what to say. I asked if I did something to upset her, and she said, "No, not all. I just want a wedding party to look polished. You understand, right? You're still invited as a guest." I told her I needed some time to think about it, and left before I started crying. I know I'm not model. I'm a size 14, and I have some acne scarring. I'm not big into makeup, and I have a naturally curly 3B texture that I don't straighten. I also have a mild case of Bell's palsy from childhood, so one side of my smile is a bit uneven. But I always thought I looked fine, and more importantly, I thought my sister loved me for who I was. I didn't talk to her for a few days. Then I sent her a long message saying I wouldn't be attending the wedding at all. I told her that what she said made me feel small and ashamed of myself, and that I needed space from someone who sees me as some kind of flaw in her aesthetic. She responded with, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I just wanted everything to be perfect. I wasn't trying to hurt you." Then she told our parents I was being dramatic and self-centered for making her wedding about me. Now my mom keeps calling and asking me to just let it go and be the bigger person, and my dad thinks Emily didn't mean to be hurtful. She's just stressed. Even my aunt texted me to say no one will even be looking at the bridesmaids. I've been second-guessing myself ever since. I know weddings make people act weird. Maybe I am overreacting, but part of me feels like attending after that conversation would be like co-signing her view of me as some kind of aesthetic blemish. Still, it's a big deal to miss my only sibling's wedding. My boyfriend says he supports whatever I decide, but I can tell he thinks skipping the wedding altogether is harsh. So, AITA for refusing to attend? AITA for refusing to let my parents meet my child until they apologize for their past behavior? I, 32F, have a son, Jacob, too, and I'm married to my husband, Ben, 34M. Jacob is the light of my life, and I've been doing everything I can to be a great mother to him. My relationship with my parents, however, is a different story. To give you some context, my relationship with my parents has always been rocky. They've never been the most supportive, and their behavior towards me, especially growing up, has been emotionally damaging. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. My parents always had high expectations for me, but those expectations were never balanced with any encouragement or support. I remember being constantly compared to my younger brother and sister, who could do no wrong in their eyes. I was the responsible one, the one who had to take care of things when my parents were absent, whether emotionally or physically. I was often told that I needed to be perfect because, as the oldest, it was my job to set an example. This pressure grew worse as I got older, and I found myself constantly walking on eggshells around them. But it wasn't just the pressure that hurt. It was their treatment of me and their disregard for my needs. There were many instances throughout my childhood and adolescence where my parents would criticize my friends, my hobbies, my choices, and even my appearance. I had an eating disorder in high school, and instead of offering me help or compassion, my mom called me vain and told me I was just trying to get attention. When I went to college, they didn't visit me once and barely called. The few times I did try to reach out, I was met with cold responses and judgment for not doing things their way. As an adult, the emotional neglect continued. I tried to talk to them about how I felt, but they always dismissed my feelings as overreacting or being too sensitive. Despite all of this, when I got pregnant with Jacob, I made the decision to try and mend my relationship with them. I thought that maybe they would change, that maybe having a grandchild would soften their hearts. I was wrong. When I first told my parents I was expecting, they didn't react the way I hoped. My dad's first response was, "Are you sure you're ready for this?" instead of congratulating me. My mom's response was, "Well, it's about time you gave me a grandchild," as if I was obligated to have children to meet their expectations. Still, I pushed my hurt feelings aside and told myself they would come around. As the pregnancy progressed, I tried to involve them. I sent updates about doctor's appointments and asked if they wanted to be involved in planning the baby shower. They mostly ignored my attempts, but I kept trying. Even when Jacob was born, my parents didn't visit until he was over 2 months old. And when they finally did, they criticized me for not following their old-fashioned parenting methods. They didn't like the way I fed him, didn't like the way I dressed him, and questioned every decision I made. They didn't help when they came over. Instead, they sat back and made passive-aggressive comments about my parenting. I remember my mom telling me I was spoiling him by picking him up every time he cried, and my dad telling me that back in my day, babies were tougher. It felt like everything I did was wrong in their eyes. Things took a turn for the worse when Jacob turned 1. My parents, despite my warnings, insisted on taking him out without asking for my approval. They showed up unannounced and tried to take him for a walk to the park without me. I told them I wasn't comfortable with them taking him anywhere without me or my husband being present. They ignored my wishes and took him anyway. And when they returned, they acted as if nothing was wrong. When I confronted them, they told me I was being overprotective and that I needed to let go. They also told me that I should trust them because they had raised 3 kids, as if that somehow meant they knew better than I did about my own child. This incident left me feeling betrayed, and I started distancing myself from them. I told them that they needed to respect my boundaries as a parent and that I would appreciate it if they didn't overstep in the future. I also told them that I wasn't okay with them constantly undermining my choices as a mother. A few months later, when Jacob turned 2, my parents reached out again, asking to meet him. They had heard through the grapevine that I was planning to have a small birthday party for him and insisted that they be invited. At this point, I was exhausted from the emotional manipulation and constant disregard for my boundaries. I told them that I wasn't comfortable with them meeting Jacob yet because I felt they hadn't shown me the respect I deserved as a parent. I explained that their behavior had been hurtful and that I needed an apology from them before they could meet him. They were furious. They both called me separately and accused me of being dramatic. My mom said I was punishing them for something that happened years ago and that I needed to get over it because they were family. My dad said I was being selfish and that I was keeping him from his grandchild. They told me that I was being unreasonable and that I should just let it go. My mom even brought up how they had sacrificed everything for me when I was a kid and that I was being ungrateful for not letting them be a part of Jacob's life. They kept pushing for access to my son without addressing any of the issues I had raised. I stuck to my guns and told them I wouldn't allow them to meet Jacob until they apologized for their actions and acknowledged how their behavior had affected me. I explained that I wasn't doing this to hurt them, but to protect my own mental health and my relationship with my child. I also made it clear that I wasn't going to allow them to undermine my parenting or treat me like I didn't matter. Since then, they've continued to try and pressure me into letting them see Jacob. They've sent passive-aggressive texts, left voicemail messages, and even tried to get other family members involved. Some of my relatives agree with my decision, but others have accused me of being too harsh and holding onto the past. They say I'm being unfair to Jacob by not letting him have a relationship with his grandparents. So, AITA for refusing to let my parents meet Jacob until they apologize for their past behavior? I feel like I'm doing what's best for my son and myself, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm being too AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after how she treated me at hers. This situation has been boiling for over a year now, and it's finally coming to a head. I, 29F, have one sister, Beth, 32F. We've always had a strained relationship, mostly because Beth is the golden child in our family. I was always the quieter one, more focused on school and work, while Beth has always been the loud, outgoing type who dominated every family gathering. My parents, especially my mom, fawn over her. I try to brush it off growing up, but it's been harder as adults. Beth got married last year, and I was her maid of honor. I wasn't super thrilled to do it because our relationship has never been close, but I agreed, thinking maybe it would be a chance for us to connect. Boy, was I wrong. The entire wedding planning process was a nightmare. She became a total bridezilla. She constantly changed plans, ignored my input, demanded I attend every appointment and tasting, even though I live 2 hours away and have a full-time job, and then berated me when I said I couldn't make every single one. I spent thousands on the bachelorette party and dress, and she barely said thank you. But the worst part came at the actual wedding. I had worked hard on a speech. I don't like public speaking, but I want to make it meaningful. The night before the wedding, she told me she didn't want me to give a speech anymore. When I asked why, she said she was worried I'd make it about myself or bring the mood down. I was honestly shocked and hurt. I'd never given her any reason to think that. I had shown her my speech beforehand, and it was all about her and her husband. Then, at the reception, she had her new sister-in-law, who she's known for like 2 years, give a speech instead. I sat there at the head table, silent and humiliated. Nobody said anything to me. I just tried to smile through it, but I cried later that night in the hotel room. After the wedding, I distanced myself. I stopped responding to her constant group texts, didn't engage in family gossip, and started politely declining plans that involved her. I didn't go no contact or anything. I just stopped trying. Fast forward to now. She's planning a second wedding ceremony/reception for her husband's extended family in their hometown. He's from a different country, and they eloped there earlier this year for a legal ceremony. She's throwing another big event and asked me to help. She texted me last month saying, "Hey, I want you to be my maid of honor again for the second wedding. So excited. You can help plan everything since you've done it once now, haha." I left her on read for a few days before responding that I appreciated the offer, but I wasn't up for doing that again. I told her I didn't think it would be healthy for either of us, and I wished her the best. That blew up into a massive family drama. She called me crying, asking why I was punishing her and being vindictive. My mom called and said I was being spiteful and breaking Beth's heart. My dad was a little more neutral, but still said I should just do it to keep the peace. I told them I felt like I was only wanted for labor and not love. None of them acknowledged how badly I'd been treated last year. Beth said I was selfish and jealous of her happiness. She accused me of trying to ruin her big moment again. I asked her what she meant by again, and she brought up how I made things tense after the wedding last year by being moody and withdrawing from the family. It's true I was distant, but it was because I was hurt. I didn't yell or cause drama. I didn't post anything online. I just needed space. But apparently, even silently being upset was me making things about myself. Now the entire family is divided. My mom is furious with me, and I'm being called immature and unforgiving. My cousin even DM'd me saying I should just get over it because it's not that deep. But to me, it was that deep. It wasn't just the speech, it was the entire year of being treated like a tool instead of a sister. I've been going to therapy for a while, and my therapist agrees that I need to put up boundaries, especially since I've historically been the one bending over backward to keep the peace. But I still feel guilt. A lot of guilt. I hate that this has become such a big issue. Beth's second wedding is in July, and she's now picked one of her college friends to be maid of honor. I haven't been uninvited, but I have no desire to go. I haven't RSVP'd, and every day the pressure builds. Part of me feels like skipping it entirely, but I know that'll ignite another explosion. So, AITA for refusing to help with her wedding after how I was treated during the first one? Should I have sucked it up for the sake of peace? I don't know anymore. I feel like no matter what I do, I'm the bad guy. AITA for refusing to let my stepson move back in after what he did to my daughter? I, 43M, married my wife Natalie, 41F, 5 years ago. I have one daughter, Ava, 16F, from my previous marriage, and Natalie has a son, Brian, 18M. When we got married, Brian was 13 and Ava was 11. We moved into a new house together, and from the beginning, there were some issues with the kids not getting along, but we figured it was typical blended family stuff. Brian has always been kind of a difficult kid. He's not a bad person at his core, but he has a tendency to act out, push boundaries, and talk down to people, especially Ava. It started small, snide comments, teasing her about her clothes or her interests. We tried to correct it when we saw it, but Natalie often chalked it up to boys being boys or said it was just how brothers are. I didn't want to overstep, but I had multiple conversations with Brian about respect. Things escalated more over time. By the time Brian was 16, he had developed a real attitude, especially toward authority. He got suspended twice during his junior year for fighting and once for being caught with a vape pen. Still, we tried to work through it. I took him to therapy, he got a mentor through school, and we even did family counseling for a bit. Ava, meanwhile, is quieter, focused on her schoolwork, very artistic, and introverted. She mostly kept to herself, but you could tell Brian's behavior affected her. She started avoiding the common areas and always seemed tense around him. Then came the incident that changed everything. About 8 months ago, I came home from work early and found Ava crying in her room. She had locked herself in and wouldn't open the door. When I finally got her to talk, she told me Brian had gone through her journal and posted private excerpt from on a Snapchat story with some really mean captions, calling her a freak, mocking her drawings, and making fun of her crush on a classmate. It wasn't just shared to a few people either. He posted it to his public story where a bunch of their classmates could see it. She was humiliated. She begged me not to tell anyone because she was scared more people would see it if we made a big deal out of it. But I couldn't let it go. I confronted Brian that night. He didn't deny it. His only excuse was, she's always acting like she's better than everyone. I was just messing with her. I was furious. I grounded him immediately, took his phone, and told him he'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Natalie backed me up initially, but within days, she started minimizing it. Teenagers do dumb things, she said. He didn't hit her. It's not abuse. He just made a mistake. No matter how much I tried to explain the emotional damage he caused, she kept brushing it off. Ava became more withdrawn than ever, and I couldn't stand seeing her so scared and hurt in her own home. So I made a decision. Brian would have to go live with his dad for a while. Natalie was furious. She said I was kicking her son out of his own home. I told her I wasn't doing it to punish Brian, but to protect Ava. He needed time away to think about his actions, and Ava needed a safe space to heal. We argued for weeks, and it put a huge strain on our marriage, but I didn't back down. Brian moved in with his dad in December. Since then, Ava's been doing better. She's smiling more, she's opening up in therapy, and her grades even improved. I thought maybe things were settling down. But now, Natalie wants Brian to move back in. He graduated early from high school and claims he wants to make amends. According to her, he's matured and learned his lesson. She says we're a family and he deserves a second chance. She wants him to start community college here in town and live at home to save money. I said no. I told her I'm not comfortable having Brian in the same house as Ava after what he did. It wasn't a minor mistake. It was targeted humiliation that deeply impacted her mental health. He never even gave a real apology. When I asked him to write one back in January, he sent Ava a half-hearted two-sentence text that basically just said, "Sorry you were hurt." That's not remorse. That's checking a box. I suggested that if he really wants to show he's changed, he can get a job, save up, and get a place of his own. We can help him with rent or groceries. But Ava's safety and well-being comes first. Natalie is calling me cruel and accusing me of playing favorites. She's even started staying overnight at her sister's house to get some space. She says I'm tearing the family apart by treating Brian like a criminal. I told her this wasn't about punishment. It's about trust. And I don't trust Brian not to hurt Ava again. I can't risk her regressing just so he can have the convenience of living at home. I asked Ava how she'd feel if Brian moved back, and she got so upset she started crying again. She said she'd rather live with her mom full-time if that happened. That sealed it for me. But now Natalie is telling her mutual friends that I'm emotionally abusing her son by exiling him, and that I'm forcing her to choose between her child and her husband. A few people have reached out to say I should let Brian back for the sake of peace, that he's 18 now and deserve a clean slate. I don't know what to do. I love my wife, and I don't want our marriage to fall apart, but I feel like she's asking me to sacrifice Ava's emotional safety for the sake of appearances. I've tried offering compromises, but nothing's good enough unless Brian comes home. So, AITA for refusing to let my stepson move back in after what he did to my daughter? AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my house after she lost hers, even though I have plenty of space. So this started a few months ago, and it's been a slow-boiling mess ever since. For background, I, 36F, own a 4-bedroom house in a relatively quiet neighborhood. I bought it 5 years ago after saving aggressively for a down payment and working long hours at my job as a software developer. I live alone with my dog, a very quiet and well-behaved golden retriever named Murphy, and have intentionally kept my home a sanctuary of peace and routine. 2 of the bedrooms are used as my home office and a guest room, and the 4th I turned into a home gym during the pandemic, which I've come to rely on daily for mental and physical health. I've never had roommates, don't throw parties, and genuinely enjoy my solitude. Enter my sister Amanda, 34F, mother of 3 kids aged 9, 6, and 4. She and I have never been super close. We were raised by a single mom and had a pretty rough upbringing. Mom worked 2 jobs and still struggled to make ends meet. I became independent early and started working at 16, while Amanda always had more of a chaotic lifestyle. She's had 3 different baby daddies, none of whom are in the picture, jump from job to job, and tend to fall into relationships that are frankly disastrous. About 3 months ago, Amanda called me in full panic mode. She had just lost her job, again, and was behind on rent. The landlord gave her a 30-day notice, and she had nowhere to go. She asked if she and the kids could move in with me just for a little while until she got back on her feet. Now, this wasn't the first time Amanda has been in a situation like this. Over the past 10 years, she's moved probably 8 times, staying with friends, boyfriends, and even our mom for a bit. But always ends in drama. There's yelling, broken things, kids running wild, and Amanda blaming everyone else for her problems. So I told her I needed some time to think it over. I took a few days to consider it seriously, talked to a friend who's a lawyer about tenancy rights, just in case, and even thought about whether I could section off part of the house to give them privacy. But no matter how I tried to frame it, it just felt like I'd be sacrificing my peace, my routine, and frankly, my mental health. While I told Amanda I didn't think it would work, she went ballistic. She accused me of being cold-hearted, of abandoning family, of having all that space and doing nothing with it. She dragged our upbringing into it, saying I was always the favorite and that I owed her for all the time she took the fall for me growing up, which is a wild exaggeration at best. My mom got involved, of course. She's been on Amanda's side from the jump, telling me that family helps family and that I'm being selfish. She offered to help pay for groceries if Amanda and the kids moved in. But when I asked if she'd be willing to house them herself again, she suddenly had a million excuses. Her apartment is too small, she's too old to be around young kids every day, etc. Then the guilt tripping started. Amanda's oldest, my niece, called me crying one night, asking why I didn't want them. That one hurt. I tried explaining that it wasn't about not wanting them. It was about needing to maintain a stable home life for myself. But how do you explain that to a child without sounding like a monster? I offered to help Amanda in other ways. I gave her $500 to help with moving costs, helped her find a local shelter program that also connects families to low-income housing, and even reached out to a friend who owns a small cleaning business to see if there was part-time work available. She turned everything down except the money, and even then, she said it was the least I could do. Meanwhile, she ended up crashing with a friend of a friend, and from what I've heard, it's already gotten tense over there. Now, every family interaction is awkward. I didn't go to Easter brunch because Amanda was going to be there, and I just couldn't deal with the passive-aggressive comments. Our mom keeps sending me inspirational texts about compassion and sacrifice, and I found out Amanda has been posting vague stuff on social media like, some people only love you when it's convenient, and blood doesn't mean loyalty. Some of my friends are fully on my side, saying I did the right thing by setting boundaries. A couple of others say they might have let her stay for a few weeks, just until she got housing sorted. But they don't really understand what it's like having Amanda in your life. She brings chaos with her wherever she goes, even if she doesn't mean to. And this wasn't just a few weeks situation. The last time she moved in with someone temporarily, she stayed 9 months, didn't pay rent, and left the place trashed. I know because that was with a mutual friend who swore never again. I've worked really hard to build the life I have now. It took years of financial discipline, therapy, and just generally keeping my world as calm as possible. I know I'm not obligated to share my space, but I can't shake the feeling that maybe I should have done more, especially for the kids. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her 3 kids move in my home when they lost their housing, even though I had the space and she said it was just temporary. AITA for canceling my son's wedding after discovering what his fiancée said about my daughter. So I, 51F, have 4 kids, 3 boys, 27M, 25M, 22M, and my youngest, my daughter Olivia, 17F. I've been a single mom for most of their lives. Their dad passed away when Olivia was just a baby. It was hard, and I won't sugarcoat it. There were years where we were barely getting by. But we stayed close and supported each other. Olivia is the surprise baby, and there's a bigger age gap between her and her brothers. Because of that, they're very protective of her, especially my oldest, Jake, 27M, who basically became a second father figure. He's the one getting married. Jake's fiancée, Amanda, 26F, has been in the picture for about 3 years. I've always tried to have a good relationship with her. She's polite enough, but there's always been something a little off. Maybe it's that she comes from a very wealthy family and doesn't really understand our background. I chalked it up to personality differences. Anyway, the wedding was supposed to be last weekend. Everything was planned. Venue booked, dress fitted, catering paid for, guests flying in. I spent over $20,000 helping them pay for it. Amanda's family contributed a bit, but not as much as I expected given their wealth. Still, I wanted to support my son. The issue started about 2 weeks before the wedding. Olivia came home from what was supposed to be a casual lunch with Amanda in tears. She wouldn't tell me what happened right away, just locked herself in her room. After some coaxing, she finally told me what was said. Apparently, Amanda invited Olivia to lunch to talk about her role in the wedding. Olivia was supposed to be a junior bridesmaid. Nothing too flashy, just part of the bridal party. Amanda told her that she decided it was better for the aesthetic if Olivia didn't walk down the aisle. She said she'd still be welcome to attend, but not participate. Olivia asked why, and Amanda told her, "Look, I know you've been through a lot, but this isn't a charity case. It's a wedding." Olivia was stunned. Amanda then allegedly made comments about Olivia's acne and weight, suggesting she didn't photograph well. She also said something like, "I can't have someone who looks like that standing next to me in pictures I'll be showing my kids someday." I was furious. I wanted to give Amanda the benefit of the doubt, so I texted her asking to meet. We sat down that weekend, and I brought up what Olivia told me. Amanda didn't even deny it. She just kind of laughed and said, "Oh, come on, don't be so dramatic. I was just trying to explain that it's not a good fit. She'll still be at the wedding." I told her that excluding my daughter over her looks was cruel and unacceptable. She rolled her eyes and said, "This isn't about you or your daughter. It's about what I want on my big day." That was the final straw. I called Jake that night. I told him everything. He didn't say much at first. The next day, he called back and said he spoke with Amanda, and that while he didn't agree with how she said it, he thought I was blowing it out of proportion and that maybe Olivia would be happier not being in the spotlight. I asked him point blank if he thought Amanda was in the right. He said, "It's complicated." I told him I couldn't, in good conscience, support this marriage. Not when his fiancée treated his sister like that, and he brushed it off. I told him I was pulling out my financial support, canceling the check for the catering, not paying the venue balance, and letting the photographer know we wouldn't be covering their bill. Jake freaked out. He said it was too late to back out, that contract was signed, and that I was being vindictive. I said I didn't care. I wasn't going to spend thousands of dollars to celebrate someone who humiliated my daughter and treated her like trash. I said he could still go through with the wedding, but I wasn't going to be there. The fallout was massive. Amanda's parents had to scramble to cover the costs I backed out of. Some things couldn't be saved. The original venue canceled when the final payment didn't come through. The wedding ended up being moved to a smaller location and was much more modest. My ex-husband's side of the family was furious at me, saying I embarrassed Jake. 2 of my sons are torn. The middle one is siding with Jake, while the younger one is on my and Olivia's side. Jake hasn't spoken to me since the wedding. Olivia still cries about it. She says she feels like it's her fault. I keep trying to reassure her that it's not, but the guilt eats at her. I feel awful that my family is so fractured right now, but I couldn't just let Amanda treat my daughter that way and act like nothing happened. Friends are split. Some say I should have sucked it up for the wedding and dealt with it afterward. Others say I did the right thing standing up for my daughter. So, AITA? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with us after she ruined my wedding day. So I, 29F, got married to my husband, James, 32M, in a beautiful ceremony last month. We've been together for about 5 years, and we were both really excited about the wedding. We planned it for over a year. It was a dream come true. But the entire day was almost ruined by my sister-in-law, Kayla, 28F, and now there's a massive family fallout because of it. To give you some context, Kayla and I have never really gotten along. She's always been a bit of a drama queen. It's not like she's actively trying to cause issues, but she has a knack for making everything about her. She's the type of person who would stir up trouble if she feels like she's not the center of attention. I try to be nice and accommodate her over the years, but it's been difficult. For example, last year, she made a scene at my birthday dinner because I didn't invite her to a small get-together I had with my close friends. She later posted on social media that I was shunning her, even though she was just mad about not being invited to an event she didn't even ask about. So, needless to say, she's not my favorite person. When we were planning the wedding, I had a conversation with James about the guest list and made it clear that I didn't want Kayla as one of my bridesmaids. This wasn't a personal attack against her. It was just because I knew that she would make things complicated. James didn't argue too much about it and agreed that it would be better for the peace of the day. However, he did ask me to let her be involved in some other way, so I offered her a role as one of the readers during the ceremony. I thought this was a fair compromise, and she could still be part of the day without causing unnecessary tension. She seemed fine with this at the time. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything was going smoothly, and I was so happy. But as we're getting ready for the ceremony, Kayla starts acting off. She kept pulling me aside to talk about how she felt overlooked and how she didn't understand why she wasn't a bridesmaid. I tried to keep my cool and reminded her that we'd already had this conversation and that she had an important role as a reader. But she wouldn't let it go. She started making passive-aggressive comments about the flowers, the decorations, the bridesmaids' dresses, and even the seating arrangement at the reception. She was turning everything into a complaint, and it was really starting to stress me out. I brushed it off at first, but then the ceremony began, and it was time for Kayla's reading. She was supposed to read a passage from one of my favorite books, something I'd chosen months ago. As she began, I noticed her voice was shaking, and she wasn't speaking clearly. I could barely hear her, and I could see her fumbling with the paper, almost like she didn't care. It was the most awkward moment, and the guests were shifting in their seats. I was trying to keep a smile on my face, but inside I was cringing. At that point, I just wanted the ceremony to end so I could get through it. When the reading was finally over, Kayla made a dramatic gesture as if she had done her part and practically stormed off. My heart sank, and I knew I was going to be dealing with her for the rest of the day. But didn't stop there. During the reception, Kayla continued to make passive-aggressive comments about everything, from the food to the music to the fact that she wasn't seated with the immediate family. She then started making weird little jabs at me, saying things like, well, at least I didn't make the wedding about me, even though I've got plenty of things I could complain about. I was getting more and more frustrated, but I didn't want to let her ruin the day, so I tried to keep my cool. However, my friends and family were starting to notice too. Some of them even pulled me aside to ask if Kayla was okay, because it seemed like she was having some sort of meltdown, but I just said that she was being a little dramatic. Later on, she pulled James aside and had a very private conversation with him. I could see James's face becoming more and more concerned, but when she finally left, he told me that Kayla had said she felt so unwanted and unappreciated at the wedding. She told him that she had hoped the wedding would be her chance to prove she was important to the family. He told me he was sorry for how things went down, but I could tell he was kind of trying to appease her. The wedding ended up going well enough, but by the end of the night, I was emotionally drained, and Kayla's behavior kept weighing on my mind. She didn't apologize, and it felt like she made the day all about her insecurities. I tried to let it go, but the next day, I had to speak to James about it because I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. I told him that I didn't want Kayla staying with us after the wedding. I just needed some space and didn't want to deal with any more drama. He was a bit taken aback by my request, but he eventually agreed. However, when I mentioned this to my in-laws, they were furious. They said I was being too harsh and that I should have just let it slide. They told me that Kayla was obviously having some personal issues and that I should have been more understanding. Now, James and I are stuck in the middle of family conflict. He's frustrated with me because he feels like I'm making things worse, and my in-laws are upset because they think I'm punishing Kayla when she just wanted to be part of the celebration. Meanwhile, I feel like I've done everything I could to be accommodating, and she just can't take a hint. I'm feeling really torn about all of this. AITA for refusing to let Kayla stay with us after the wedding, especially after everything she did. AITA for not inviting my sister-in-law to my wedding after she made my fiancé feel uncomfortable. So I, 28M, am getting married in a few months to my fiancée, Emma, 27F. We've been together for 4 years, and everything has been going pretty smoothly up until recently. My family is generally close-knit, but we do have a few issues here and there. One of the biggest problems has been my relationship with my sister-in-law, Amy, 30F, who's married to my brother, Ben, 32M. Now, I know there's always going to be a bit of tension between family members, but this whole situation really blew up in a way that I wasn't expecting. A little background. Emma and Amy have never really clicked. Amy is a very outgoing and, honestly, somewhat overbearing person. She loves attention and isn't shy about making herself the center of every conversation. On the other hand, Emma is more reserved and, although she's very friendly, she doesn't always know how to handle people who dominate the conversation. Over the past couple of years, there's been a bit of tension between the two, but it was nothing that seemed like it couldn't be resolved. That was until last summer. My family threw a big barbecue to celebrate Ben and Amy's anniversary. Emma and I were invited, of course, but Amy's behavior toward Emma took a serious turn for the worse. Amy has always been somewhat condescending to Emma, making little comments here and there about her career, her style, or even her hobbies. Emma always brushed it off, but this time it felt different. At one point, when Emma went to the kitchen to help with drinks, Amy made a comment in front of the whole group about how Emma's job as a marketing coordinator wasn't exactly the kind of career you'd expect for someone with a college degree. It was awkward, and I could tell that Emma was hurt. She tried to laugh it off, but I could see the frustration in her eyes. I asked Amy to tone it down a bit, but she just shrugged it off and continued. It got worse after that. She kept making passive-aggressive comments, even about Emma's appearance. She made some remark about how Emma might want to try a different shade of lipstick, something a little more bold. That was the moment I finally snapped. I pulled Amy aside and told her she needed to stop, that she was being rude and hurtful, and that if she couldn't treat Emma with respect, she wouldn't be invited to any family events moving forward. Amy didn't take it well. She argued that I was overreacting and that I was just protecting my fiancé. She said that Emma couldn't handle a little bit of joking around and that she was being too sensitive. But I didn't back down. I told her to either apologize to Emma or not come to any more events. Amy reluctantly apologized, but the tension between her and Emma was palpable. It felt like things were never going to be the same. Fast forward a few months to our wedding planning. We sent out invitations to all of our close family and friends, but I made the decision to not invite Amy. I know that might sound harsh, but I didn't want to put Emma through the discomfort of being around someone who had made her feel so small and disrespected in the past. I talked to my brother Ben first, explaining my reasons. Ben didn't take it well, and honestly, I didn't expect him to. He said that I was being childish and that family should come together for something as important as a wedding. He insisted that Amy should be invited, that she had apologized, and that I was just holding on to petty grudges. I tried to explain that it wasn't about holding a grudge, but about protecting Emma's mental health. Emma wasn't comfortable being around Amy, and I wasn't going to force her into a situation where she felt uncomfortable for the sake of family harmony. Ben called me a selfish jerk and said that I was choosing Emma over my own family. He said I was alienating myself from the rest of the family by excluding Amy, and that this was just going to cause more problems down the line. After that, I didn't hear much from my brother. The rest of my family, including my parents, has been split on the issue. Some agree with me, saying that I'm just looking out for Emma, and that Amy's behavior was uncalled for. Others think I should just let it go and invite Amy for the sake of peace, especially since she had apologized. Here's where I need the verdict. AITA for not inviting Amy to my wedding after everything that happened? Should I just put the past behind me for the sake of family? Or am I right to exclude her in order to protect my fiancé? I know that family is important, but at the end of the day, Emma comes first. I want to do what's right by her and make sure she's not put in an uncomfortable situation. But am I being too harsh by excluding Amy from such an important day? I don't know if I'm overreacting, but the whole situation has really gotten to me, and I don't know where to go from here. Please, let me know what you think. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she tried to ban my wife from coming? So, here's the situation. I, 32M, have a younger sister, 28F, who is getting married in a few weeks. Let me start by saying that my wife, Emily, 31F, and I have been together for almost 8 years. We've been married for 4 years, and she's a wonderful person, kind, funny, loving, everything I could ask for. My family loves her, and we get along well, which brings us to the issue. My sister has always been a bit, well, let's just say extra. She's the type of person who has to make everything about her. When we were kids, she would throw tantrums if things didn't go her way, and even as an adult, she's always wanted the spotlight. Over the years, I've gotten used to it, but I can't say I've enjoyed it. Last month, my sister called me to discuss her wedding plans. She was going over the guest list, and she brought up something I wasn't expecting. She told me that she wanted to have a very exclusive guest list and that she was limiting the number of people she invited to the wedding. She then said that she had a problem with Emily coming. She didn't give a clear reason, but said that she didn't feel comfortable with her being there. Now, my sister has never liked Emily all that much, but I thought this was a bit much. To be fair, Emily has never been the type to steal the spotlight. She's shy in social situations, especially around big families like mine, where everyone is loud and constantly talking over each other. I've seen her go out of her way to make sure no one feels uncomfortable, but my sister has always been quick to criticize her for things that seem minor or even irrelevant. Like once, Emily wore a dress that my sister thought was too casual for a family gathering, and my sister made it into a huge deal. So, I knew there was some tension, but it was nothing serious. I asked my sister to clarify why she didn't want Emily at the wedding. She kept dancing around the question, saying that she just didn't feel right about it, and that she was trying to keep the wedding intimate and not have too many people who might cause drama. I couldn't get a straight answer, and I started to feel like she was just looking for an excuse to exclude Emily. She then went on to say, "I know it's your wife, but it's my wedding, and I need it to be a perfect day." I was honestly floored. I told her that if Emily couldn't come, then I wouldn't be attending either. She didn't take that well, accusing me of being selfish and that I was putting my wife ahead of family. I tried to explain that my wife is part of my family, and if she wasn't welcome, I wasn't either. My sister argued that I was overreacting and that I should just leave Emily at home for one day. I was firm in my decision that I wouldn't go if she didn't let Emily come. My sister then told me that I was being unreasonable and that family should come first. She also said that it was her wedding and she could invite whoever she wanted, which is true, but it didn't sit well with me. She also mentioned that she had a lot of people coming from out of town and that there were just limited seats. I get that weddings can be expensive and space is an issue, but this whole thing felt like an excuse to me. I've been to plenty of weddings where people invite people they might not even be that close with, and it's never been an issue. Things got heated. I told her I wasn't going to sit there and watch her treat Emily like that, especially when she's done nothing but be kind to everyone. My sister kept calling me selfish, and I just kept repeating that if Emily wasn't invited, I wouldn't be either. The conversation ended with her saying she'd think about it, but I didn't get a resolution. A few days later, she sent me a text saying that she had decided that it would be best if I didn't attend the wedding if I was going to be so difficult. I was honestly shocked, but it wasn't a complete surprise considering the way the conversation went. I didn't respond at first, but I talked to Emily about it, and she said that while she was hurt, she didn't want me to lose my relationship with my sister over this. Still, I felt betrayed. How could my sister think this was okay? How could she exclude my wife from an event that was supposed to be about celebrating love and family? I eventually texted her back and said that I wouldn't be attending her wedding under these circumstances. She hasn't really responded to me since then, and our relationship has been a little strained. My mom called me a couple of days ago and told me I was being too hard on my sister and that I should just go to the wedding and let it go. I've been thinking about it, but the more I think about it, the more I feel like I'm in the right. I don't think it's right to exclude Emily just because my sister doesn't like her for no real reason. Now, a lot of our family is upset with me, saying I'm making a scene and creating drama by not attending. They think I should just suck it up and go, even if it's uncomfortable for the sake of family. But I feel like if I go, I'd be sending a message that it's okay for my sister to treat Emily this way. And I can't just ignore it, right? So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she tried to ban my wife from coming. AITA for getting upset with my fiancé for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding because it's too far. So, this is a bit of a long story, and I really need some outside perspectives on it. I, 29F, have been with my fiancé, 32M, for about 3 years now, and we're in the midst of planning our wedding. Everything is going well overall, but there's been a disagreement that's been bugging me for the last few weeks, and I'm not sure if I'm overreacting or if he's being unreasonable. Let me get some background. My best friend, Sarah, 30F, and I have been friends since we were little kids. We grew up together, went through high school and college together, and we've always been there for each other. She's one of the most important people in my life. She got engaged last year, and her wedding is scheduled for next month. I've been super excited for her, and I've been helping her with planning whenever she needs it. The thing is, her wedding is taking place in another state. To be specific, it's about a 6-hour drive from where we live, or about a 1-hour flight. She originally wanted to have it closer to where we grew up, but for a bunch of reasons, family drama, venue availability, etc., she settled on a destination that was a bit of a drive. She sent out the invites months ago, and she's been really clear that while it's a bit of a trek, she'd love to have all of her closest friends and family there. Now, my fiancé and I have been having a lot of discussions about this wedding, and here's where things have gone south. I told him months ago about the wedding date and how I was planning to attend. We've always talked about attending big events like weddings together, and I assumed he'd be on board for this one too. I mean, I'm her maid of honor, so it's not just a casual guest situation. I'm deeply involved in this. But when I brought it up again recently, my fiancé immediately started complaining about how far the wedding is. He said it was inconvenient and that he didn't want to make the drive or the flight, especially since he has a lot of work commitments around that time. I tried to explain that I really wanted him to be there with me, not just for my sake, but also because Sarah is important to both of us, and I didn't want to go alone. Plus, he was invited, and I didn't want to look like we were just showing up without him, especially since he's never met some of my college friends and Sarah's extended family. He pushed back, saying it wasn't just about the distance, but also about how much time he'd have to take off from work. He said that since it was a whole weekend trip, he'd miss some important meetings and that it just wasn't worth it. He also said that I should go without him and that he'd be fine with it. I told him that I didn't feel comfortable going without him, especially since I was in such a significant role. I wasn't asking him to be there for the whole weekend, but I wanted him to come for the wedding day, at least. The problem is, the more we've talked about it, the more frustrated I've become. I feel like he's being unreasonable, especially when I've tried to compromise with him. I suggested we could drive up a day before the wedding, spend the night, and then come back right after the ceremony so it wouldn't interfere too much with his work. But he said it was still too much of a hassle and that I was being unrealistic. He also brought up the cost, saying it was too expensive for us to make that trip. But we're both financially stable, and I don't think that's a real issue. Sure, it's not cheap, but we've both been to weddings that have cost more to attend, and I didn't expect him to foot the bill for everything. I'm willing to cover my share of the costs, but he just didn't want to deal with it, no matter how many times I reassured him. At this point, I'm really hurt by his response. It feels like he's not prioritizing me or my friendship with Sarah, and it's making me question how much he really values our relationship with the people who are important to me. I've attended events for his family, helped with his work stuff, and always try to be supportive of his commitments. But when it comes to something that matters a lot to me, he just seems unwilling to make any effort. I've even started thinking that maybe I'm expecting too much from him. Maybe he's not as close to my friends as I am, and it's unreasonable for me to expect him to drop everything for a wedding that's far away. But on the other hand, I feel like if we're going to get married soon, this is the kind of thing that matters, being there for each other's big moments, even if it's a little inconvenient or difficult. I don't know if I'm being too harsh or if he's being dismissive of my feelings. I've tried to explain why this wedding is important to me, but he's just been so resistant. I've even suggested we could make a fun weekend out of it and do a little sightseeing, but nothing seems to change his mind. So, AITA for getting upset with him over this? I want him to come with me, but I don't know if I'm asking for too much, and I'm wondering if I'm overreacting to his refusal. AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me after what happened during their last visit. At 28F, have an older sister, Sarah, 34, who has 3 kids. Emily, 12, Jake, 9, and Lucas, 5. I don't have kids of my own, and while I love my niece and nephews, I've never been in a position where I felt like I could handle looking after them full time. I have a busy job, I like my quiet time, and I don't particularly enjoy having a house full of people for extended periods of time. That being said, I've always tried to be supportive when my sister needs a break. Over the years, I've taken the kids for weekends here and there, so she could have some time to herself. And it's been fine, though it can be a bit stressful at times. A few months ago, Sarah asked if I could look after the kids for a week while she went on a much-needed vacation with her husband. She said she would cover all the expenses, including food and activities for the kids, and I agreed, though I made it clear that I couldn't take a whole week off work. I offered to take them for a few days in the middle of the week and then bring them back to her after a long weekend. She was fine with this arrangement, and everything seemed good to go. The first few days were okay. The kids were, for the most part, well-behaved. Emily is a bit of a know-it-all, but she's generally helpful and respectful. Jake is a good kid, but has a ton of energy, and Lucas is, well, 5, so he's a handful, but still cute. I've gotten used to their different personalities, and I did my best to keep them entertained while still working from home as much as I could. There were a couple of minor issues, like Lucas spilling juice on the couch and Emily arguing with Jake about what movie to watch, but nothing major. Things started to go downhill when we hit the 4th day. I had taken the kids to a park, and Lucas got upset when we were about to leave. He started crying, throwing a tantrum, and was generally inconsolable. It happens with young kids, so I tried to calm him down, but it wasn't working. He ended up screaming and kicking while I tried to put him in the car. I'll admit, I was getting frustrated because I was starting to lose my patience. I wasn't used to dealing with a meltdown like this, and I knew I had to get him home. On the way back to my place, I called Sarah, asking if she had any advice for handling Lucas when he was like this. Sarah's response was, "He just does that sometimes. He'll calm down eventually." That wasn't very helpful, but I didn't push it because I figured I could manage. When we got home, Lucas continued to cry for about another hour, and during this time, Jake and Emily started to get on each other's nerves. They were bored and frustrated, and I wasn't in the best headspace to handle the growing chaos. Emily started making sarcastic remarks about how I was too strict when I told her she couldn't play on her phone all day, and Jake began teasing Lucas, which only made him cry more. That night, I barely managed to get them all settled down for bed. Lucas, still upset, refused to go to sleep, and at one point, he even threw his stuffed animal across the room and yelled at me. I snapped and told him he needed to go to sleep, or I was going to call Sarah and send him back home early. This caused him to cry even harder, and I ended up feeling guilty but also utterly drained. The next morning, I woke up to find that the kids had made a huge mess in the living room. They had unpacked toys, food wrappers were everywhere, and there were several spills on the carpet. I was already running late for a work call and just couldn't deal with the mess, so I asked them to clean it up before we could do anything fun for the day. They argued with me about it, and when I insisted, Emily gave me an attitude and said, "You can't make us clean up everything just because we're at your house." At that point, I felt like I was completely losing control of the situation. I didn't know how much longer I could handle this, and I ended up calling Sarah again, explaining the situation and asking if she could come back early. She said no, that she and her husband had planned this trip for months, and she didn't want to cut it short. I was upset, but I tried to stay calm and handle the kids for a couple more days. The situation came to a head when we had a family dinner at my place. I tried to cook a simple meal, but the kids were running around, getting into everything and fighting with each other. At one point, Lucas knocked over a bowl of soup, and it spilled all over the floor. I asked them to sit down and eat, but they wouldn't listen. Emily and Jake were too busy arguing about who got the last roll, and Lucas started whining about not wanting to eat his vegetables. I ended up having to raise my voice, which I never do, and told them that if they couldn't behave, they were going to have to leave the table and go to their rooms. That evening, after the kids went to bed, I sat down and started texting Sarah, letting her know how difficult things had been and that I was seriously considering not keeping them for the rest of the week. I felt guilty because I knew she needed the time away, but I also felt like I was about to snap. I didn't think I could handle another full day with them, and I was worried that if I did, I would be even more overwhelmed and resentful. She called me immediately and started getting upset with me, saying that I was being dramatic and that I should just suck it up for a few more days. She said she was having a great time and didn't want to cut her trip short. I ended up telling her that I was at my breaking point and that I couldn't keep the kids for the full week. I told her I was sorry, but I needed a break. She didn't take it well. She called me selfish and said I was overreacting. She reminded me that I had agreed to help her and that it was just a week, only a week. She then accused me of being the one who had caused the issues because I wasn't being firm enough with the kids. After that conversation, I felt like absolute crap. I tried to calm down and do my best for the rest of the week, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed as a sister. The whole thing left me emotionally drained, and I ended up asking a neighbor to help me for the last day just to give me some space. When Sarah returned, she came to pick up the kids, and things were tense. She didn't really acknowledge how hard things had been for me, and I didn't want to get into it, so we just exchanged pleasantries and I handed over the kids. Since then, I haven't heard much from her, and I'm wondering if she's upset with me. Now, I'm left wondering if I was too harsh. I've never been good with kids, and I didn't feel like I had the right support to manage the situation. AITA for refusing to keep my sister's kids after everything that happened? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she uninvited me? I, 28F, have a sister, Leah, 30F, who recently got engaged. I've always been close to her, and we've shared a lot of experiences growing up. We're 2 years apart, so we've always been in the same stages of life, and I've been there for her through breakups, job changes, and family drama. So when she got engaged, I was excited for her and her fiancé, Greg, 33M. However, as soon as she started planning her wedding, things started to shift in ways that I wasn't expecting. I've never been the kind of person who's into traditional weddings, but I knew how much Leah dreamed about hers. I was happy to support her, even if it wasn't my personal style. I was even willing to help with the planning, the guest list, and whatever else she needed. But soon enough, the demands started piling up. At first, it was small things. She asked me to help with decorations and to contribute to a fancy bridal shower that she wanted to throw. I agreed, even though I wasn't in a position to spend a lot of money on extravagant gifts or events. But she seemed to expect a lot more. She mentioned multiple times that she wanted me to help cover the cost for the wedding dress, the venue, and some of the catering. I told her I couldn't afford to pay for all of those things, but I'd be happy to contribute in smaller ways. She wasn't thrilled, but reluctantly agreed. Things took a turn when Leah started getting more specific about the guest list. It seemed like every time I turned around, she was adding more people I didn't recognize. Friends from high school, cousins I barely knew, and acquaintances I had no real relationship with. I try not to say anything, but I did voice my concerns about the guest list growing out of control. She didn't listen, and before I knew it, she'd invited nearly 200 people to the wedding. I couldn't even imagine how much that would cost. As the wedding date neared, she started sending me the full breakdown of costs for every detail: flowers, music, the photographer, you name it. I was shocked. She expected me to help with these expenses. I was already struggling to make ends meet after a recent job change, and I had other financial priorities I needed to take care of. I told Leah that I could contribute what I could, but it wouldn't be anywhere near the amount she was asking for. She seemed fine with it, but I could tell she was annoyed. The last straw came when she sent me an email a few weeks before the wedding, saying that she was reevaluating her guest list and wanted to make sure her wedding was stress-free. In that email, she told me that, in order to keep things manageable, she had decided to uninvite a few people. Among those people, me. At first, I thought it was some sort of joke, but when I read the email again, I realized she was serious. She said that due to budget constraints and keeping the event intimate, she had to cut down on her list, and I was one of the casualties. I wasn't even mad about not being invited. I was more hurt by how she phrased it. It felt cold and impersonal, as if I wasn't even important enough to be part of her special day. She didn't ask if I would still be willing to help in other ways. She just cut me out entirely. I was blindsided, to say the least. I'd helped her with so many things over the years, and I thought we had a close bond. So I decided to confront her. I called her up, and we had a long conversation. She was unapologetic, saying that it wasn't personal, but that her wedding had to be about what she and Greg wanted, and that meant trimming the guest list for the sake of making it perfect. I told her that I understood her wanting the day to be perfect, but that it didn't feel right to me for her to just kick me out without any explanation. I also told her that I wasn't happy about the financial burden she was placing on me and how her expectations had become overwhelming. She didn't seem to get it. I ended up sending her a text afterward, explaining how hurt I was, not just about being uninvited, but about how she had treated me throughout the entire planning process. I said I wouldn't be able to pay for anything for the wedding, especially if I wasn't even invited to it. She responded with a short message saying, "I understand. I don't expect anything from you." That was the last time we spoke about it. The wedding went on, and I didn't attend. I spent the weekend visiting some friends who were supportive and understood why I made the decision. Still, it was hard. I felt like I'd been kicked out of a part of my family. It wasn't just about not being there on her big day. It felt like she was treating me like I wasn't important enough to even discuss the situation properly. Here's where I need the judgment. A few weeks after the wedding, I received a message from one of our other relatives who asked if I'd be willing to make a financial contribution to Leah's honeymoon fund. I was shocked and immediately started feeling like I was being expected to still pay for things despite everything that had happened. I ignored the message. Since then, my family's been asking me to make amends with Leah, saying that I should let it go because it was just a wedding and that it wasn't a big deal. I'm still not sure if I'm overreacting. I feel hurt and used. I don't want to cause a rift in the family, but I'm also frustrated with Leah's expectations and the way she treated me. My family thinks I should just get over it and move on, but I don't know if I can. Am I the asshole for refusing to pay for anything for my sister's wedding and not attending? AITA for cutting ties with my sister after she invited my ex to my wedding? 29F, am getting married in a few months to my fiancé, James, 31M, and it's supposed to be the happiest day of my life. James and I have been together for 4 years, and it's been a whirlwind of love and happiness. We've been planning our wedding for over a year now, and everything seemed to be falling into place. However, I've had a major falling out with my sister, Sarah, 27F, and I'm unsure if I'm in the wrong here. A little backstory. My ex, Tom, 30M, and I dated for almost 5 years. It was a fairly serious relationship, but we broke up 2 years ago due to incompatibility. We tried to stay friends after the breakup, but it was too hard for both of us, so we went no contact. I thought we were on good terms after the breakup, but looking back, I think there was still a lot of unresolved hurt, especially on my part. Tom was a huge part of my life for a long time, and I thought I could handle seeing him as just a friend again, but I quickly realized I couldn't. Now, fast forward to my wedding planning. Everything was going great until I was talking to Sarah about the guest list. We've always been close, even though we've had our differences here and there. She's known Tom since high school, and they've remained friends after my breakup with him. At first, I didn't think it would be an issue, but when I was going over the final guest list, I noticed that Tom was on it. I was confused because I had no intention of inviting him. I asked Sarah about it, and she said, "Oh, I just thought it would be nice for him to be there. You two have a history, and he's a part of your past. Plus, he's a good friend of mine, and it wouldn't feel right not to invite him." I told her that while I understood they were still friends, I didn't want him at my wedding. I made it clear that I was uncomfortable with it, and that I didn't want someone who was an ex-partner to be present on such an important day. I told Sarah that inviting Tom would bring back memories I wasn't ready to revisit and would put me in a position where I'd be forced to interact with someone who was a huge part of my life but no longer had a place in it. Sarah's response was not what I expected. She got upset and accused me of being unreasonable. She said I was acting like a child and that I needed to let go of the past. She also said that I was being selfish for not considering how awkward it would be for her if Tom wasn't invited. She argued that she didn't understand why I had such a big issue with him being there and that it was just a wedding, not some huge emotional moment. We went back and forth about it, and I explained that I wasn't asking her to choose between me and Tom, but that this was my wedding and I had the right to decide who was there. She said it wasn't fair that I was making her choose between me and her friendship with Tom, and that I was being petty for not wanting to move on. To be honest, this whole thing felt like a betrayal. I know Sarah is close with Tom, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was prioritizing her friendship with him over my feelings as her sister. I was hurt by how easily she brushed off my discomfort, and I started feeling like she wasn't taking my boundaries seriously. In the end, I stood firm on my decision not to invite Tom, but that led to an even bigger fallout. Sarah got furious and accused me of ruining her relationship with Tom. She said that I was making everything about me and that I wasn't even being a good sister. She told me that if I didn't allow Tom to come to the wedding, she wouldn't come either. I was taken aback by her ultimatum and tried to reason with her, but she kept insisting that I was being unreasonable. At this point, I made the decision to cut ties with her temporarily. I told her that I loved her, but I couldn't deal with this level of disrespect and emotional manipulation. I said that if she couldn't respect my wishes regarding my wedding, then maybe we needed some space. I ended up uninviting her from the wedding entirely, which was incredibly hard for me, but I felt like I had no other choice. This was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I didn't want her toxic behavior to overshadow it. It's been about 2 weeks since that confrontation, and I haven't heard from Sarah. I feel guilty, but I also feel justified in my decision. I talked to my parents about it, and they said I did the right thing, but I'm still questioning whether I overreacted. Some of my friends think I'm being too harsh and that I should let it go for the sake of family, but others have been more supportive of my stance. AITA for cutting ties with my sister over her insistence that my ex be invited to my wedding? Update. It's been a few days since I posted, and I wanted to update everyone. I ended up having a long conversation with Sarah. It was tough, but we both aired out our grievances. She apologized for how she handled things and admitted that she didn't fully understand why I was so upset. She said she was just trying to avoid drama and didn't think it would be a big deal. I appreciated her apology, but I also told her that I needed space to heal from everything that happened. We both agreed to take things slow, and she'll be attending the wedding after all, though I'll be asking Tom not to come. It's been a huge relief to get to a place of understanding, and I'm hoping this will lead to a better relationship going forward. Thanks to everyone who supported me. AITA for calling off my wedding after my fiancé's behavior at the rehearsal dinner. I, 29F, have been with my fiancé, Ben 31M, for over 4 years. We've always had a pretty solid relationship, or at least I thought we did. Our wedding was planned for this past weekend, and I honestly couldn't have been more excited. Our families get along well, and everything was going smoothly, at least that's what I thought. We had a rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding, which was supposed to be a casual, laid-back evening to celebrate and get ready for the big day. Ben and I had a few things we needed to go over with the wedding party and our families, but for the most part, it was meant to be fun and stress-free. My family is close-knit, and while Ben's family is a bit more reserved, they've always been polite and kind to me. Everything started off normal. People were laughing, making jokes, and toasting to the wedding. I was sitting next to Ben and feeling pretty happy. But as the night went on, something changed. Ben started to drink more than usual. He's not a huge drinker. He usually sticks to 1 or 2 beers during social events, but he seemed to be nursing his 3rd or 4th. I didn't think much of it first, as he's a light drinker and can hold his liquor just fine. But soon, his behavior started to shift, and not in a good way. First, he started making comments about me that were just off. At one point, he joked about how lucky he was to be marrying me because I was high maintenance and how he had to put up with my crazy family. I laughed it off because I thought he was just trying to be funny, even though I could tell his tone wasn't entirely lighthearted. Then, as the night went on, he began making more jabs at my appearance. He said something like, "I can't believe you're actually wearing that dress tomorrow. It's a bit much for someone like you." I was taken aback. I've never been super insecure about my looks, but hearing something like that in front of our families made me feel awful. I was trying to laugh it off, but I could feel the tension in the air. My sister, who's always been protective of me, shot Ben a glare, and I could see my mom getting uncomfortable. At this point, Ben was slurring his words a bit and getting louder. He started talking about how my mom always treated him like a child, and how he hated that she always made everything about herself. He said some other things that were pretty rude, but those comments about my mom really got to me. My mom had been nothing but supportive of him from the beginning, and hearing him talk about her that way was completely uncalled for. I pulled Ben aside to talk to him. I asked if he was okay and why he was acting this way. He got defensive and said I was being too sensitive. He told me that it was just a joke and that I shouldn't be overreacting. At this point, I was already starting to feel the red flags pop up, but I didn't want to make a scene before the wedding. I figured he was just having a rough night or something. So I went back to the dinner, trying to push past what had just happened, but things didn't improve. Ben became more openly critical of me and my family, and the whole atmosphere started to feel hostile. He was making passive-aggressive comments about how I was so controlling with the wedding planning, even though I had been very considerate about involving him in every decision. The final straw came when Ben got up and made a toast. He stood up in front of everyone and said, "I guess I'm about to marry a woman who's going to run my life, so here's to that." It wasn't even a joke. The room fell silent, and I just froze. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for a reaction. I could feel my face turning red, but all I could do was sit there in shock. I stood up and left the room, and at that point I was done. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I texted my maid of honor and told her to tell everyone I needed to go home. I told Ben I was leaving and that we needed to talk. He tried to stop me, saying I was overreacting, but I just couldn't take it anymore. We went back to the hotel where we were staying, and I told him that I couldn't marry him. I told him his behavior had been unacceptable, and I felt like I was marrying someone who didn't respect me or my family. He got angry and accused me of making a big deal out of nothing, saying that I was just overthinking things and that I should lighten up. I called my parents and my sister to tell them what happened, and they were shocked and concerned. My mom was devastated, but my sister immediately came over to support me. I spent the rest of the night in a daze, trying to process everything. The next morning, I canceled the wedding. I called the venue, the photographer, and the caterer to let them know everything was off. I also contacted Ben's family, though I wasn't as worried about their reaction because I knew they had been uncomfortable with his behavior too. The fallout has been intense. Ben has tried to call and text me repeatedly, saying he's sorry and that I misunderstood everything. He's saying I ruined his life and that I should have communicated better instead of ruining our wedding. His family is also upset with me, saying that I should have given him another chance and that we should have worked things out privately. My friends are split. Some of them are telling me I did the right thing, that I stood up for myself and didn't settle for a relationship where I wasn't respected. Others think I overreacted, saying that everyone has a rough night and I should have just pushed through and not made such a big deal out of it. I'm still processing everything, but I don't think I made the wrong choice. I just can't ignore how he treated me and my family that night. So, AITA for calling off my wedding after his behavior at the rehearsal dinner. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.